Hi, this is Craig Lane with Video Blog Week 13. I'm going to be talking about brain health a bit, and we'll take this into another week, into week 14 also, where if we're talking about brain health, we're actually talking about gut health, and we're talking about skin health. There's been some discoveries in the last few years, more likely longer than that, but modern science has been validating things that the yogis and some of the ancient cultures have been saying would happen in science through other means. There's been other means of discovery through, you could say, intuition, you could say exploration, you could say sitting with the canvas of silence, I could call it. And some of my greatest insights have actually come in sitting still. And so when we talk about brain health, we talk about nutrient needs, and we talk about addiction, we can talk about habit patterns, we can talk about the central processing station of our body. But another thing is certain is that the seat of consciousness is not the brain. There's a neurosurgeon who recently died and came back to life, another one of the near-death experiences. And if anyone's interested in exploring that, the work of Raymond Moody, I believe he's a parapsychologist, wrote a book called Life After Life many years ago. And that book fascinated me because I personally have been fascinated with death and the brain as an interface for consciousness. And our recent neurosurgeon friend, I wish I could remember his name, but he wrote a book about his experience. And this was a man who, like myself, was a pretty avid scientist and a pretty avid doubter of the quote-unquote woo-woo. And Barbara Brennan herself also, as I remember it, Barbara Brennan, who wrote Hands of Light and has a whole energetic healing school, used to be a NASA scientist. So sometimes the most credible people are the ones who have gone into science and seen things that they could no longer explain and then must find other avenues to explain it. And so our neurosurgeon friend discovered that the seat of awareness is not in the brain. How did he know that? Because his brain was dead. There was no neurological activity apparently in his brain. And as we discover this more and more, we're going to discover what science will point to is that the seat of our consciousness is actually outside of the physical. But what we see and hear is an interface. And what we need for interface are good minerals. And it's something that my clients know this about me, just constantly talking about good mineral status. And some of the minerals the brain needs, I'm going to go to my cheat sheet down below here, but one of the main minerals the brain needs is phosphorus, and that's the light bearer element. And you'll see this as a common theme. Another one is iodine, another one is manganese. And two of the main mineral deficiencies I see in today are iodine deficiencies and manganese deficiencies, along with the zinc and magnesium. And I know everyone's going to want to run out and go grab their health food store pills now, and that's not the answer either, because a lot of those minerals are ground up rocks or chemically derived alternatives, and we need to always look at things in a whole food base. So we look at brain health, and we look at, we're looking at a couple of things. We're looking at fatty acid status, because we have to have the right fats in our cell membranes, as the brain is composed of a lot of DHA. It's a type of omega-3 fatty acid-derived lipid, and it's also made up a lot of cholesterol. And minerals are going to be very important because you cannot conduct electricity except in a healthy electrical state. So one of the things I just did recently is I got a brain scan, a little cap put on my head, and they monitored sort of the symphony of my brain activity. And it's just sort of remarkable to see, like, the emanations the brain puts off. And we see that despite all my head injuries, he said I'm actually doing pretty good, and I'll be looking at the report. But when we look at brain health, we also look at there's a guard here, the blood-brain barrier. And some people believed, I personally believe, that the thyroid, the name for the thyroid, it looks kind of like a shield right here, this gland right here. And the thyroid gland is the shield for the upper part of the body. And there's some series of points in acupuncture. And the name for some of these points in the back of the head and the occiput and then the neck and shoulders are the windows to the sky. And it's sort of symbolic that you have the sky consciousness, which is thoughts are very etheric and light, and then words as we speak them are a little more dense, and then actions, things that we do, are more dense. So the sky, when you look at the chakra system, you know, light, and you could call this ether or something less dense, and then sound or spoken word, and we start to go into more density as we go downward in the body. And my experience of doing body scans, which point to this, also points out that, you know, brain health is a constant feedback loop. So doing body scans, you get a feedback loop of how does awareness feel in my toe? How does awareness feel looking this direction or this direction? How does awareness feel in my belly, in my back? And a body scan, as it's put in my YouTube channel and by many of my teachers, is just a real simple taking each body part without judgment and saying, how does my nose feel? How does my eye feel? How does my lips feel? And to me, when we keep bringing this back to brain health, is that the brain is an interface, and ideally we want a brain that is a good conductor of awareness. I mean, wouldn't we all want to have a discerning awareness without judgment in ourselves? One of the things that I have discovered in my adult life is the programs that start running, whether they're out here and then they're manifesting in here, or whether they're in here and they're manifesting out there, doesn't matter to me, because it's nitpicky stuff that, you know, the scientists and the people who want to really prove things on paper, or potentially philosophers or things, it doesn't matter much about what we label them or who's right or who's wrong, because ultimately we all reside in our own experience and we all have an awareness. And for me, when I talk about brain health again, it's just there's really an obvious connection between the gut and the brain. There's an enteric nervous system in the gut called the enteric nervous system, and there's a more of a nervous system up here, and they're connected via the vagus nerve. It's one of the cranial nerves that comes out and goes down into the gut. And so there's a constant feedback of energy, of signals from the body coming up. There's afferent signals, they call them. And so there's signals coming up from the body into the brain. They're interpreted, and there are signals like, I'm going to move my finger. There's a signal up here saying move finger. So ultimately, you know, when we say we feel something, it's being interpreted up here. We're an interpretive mechanism in a sense where humans are a perceptive, interpretive machine in some sense. So again, wouldn't we want our machine to, I mean, my judgment is I'd want a machine that is a clear window. I don't want a dirty window to see life through. I want to see life as it is. And as one of my teachers puts it, you know, it's nice to be able to see the truth clearly. And sometimes it's not pretty, but even that's a judgment. So I want to be able to see things clearly with an open heart, and ideally open awareness and curiosity. And so we have pointers at this. And so my point today is to say, you know, we need to keep our, you'll see it in your own experience. Like when I'm leading a liver cleanse, we're on week 3 starting tomorrow, and notice when I'm really strict, or there's a certain point of strictness with diet that leads to a certain clarity of consciousness and sort of mind over matter, you might say, where the old programs and distractions of our society that are sort of around us, I think that it's always been this way. You know, we're always going to have distractions, so I wouldn't blame it on the modern world necessarily, but it's being able to discern more clearly, because the difference between discernment is clarity, no judgment. Like, I can see a camera right here, that's a discerning awareness, but if there's a charge to it, like, I hate being on the fucking camera, there's judgment, there's charge to that. Or I think you're an asshole, you know, there's a judgment and there's charge to that. Versus I could say your behavior, like a fact might be, your behavior was this, your actions were this, and that anyone looking at it could agree upon. Like, you slammed into my car going 50 miles an hour, and your state of being while you were doing so is not within my realm of perception directly, because I'm not residing in your experience. So there's a judgment there, but there are facts that we all can agree upon, and that's kind of what I'm trying to get us back to here. Is in brain health, we want to look at facts and really be skeptical of judgments, except our own, which we can be aware of. So when we judge another, or judge an experience outside of ourself, we can get a little lost and then complicate things. So cleansing is a good way to achieve better brain health. And even just like this time of year, some of the traditional cultures, sort of Lent or the Easter season or spring was to get rid of certain attachments. So like one of the things that I'm striving to do is, even though I know I probably should not be drinking coffee much, that's one of the things I'm giving up, is just not doing it. And it feels good. There's a certain, like, talking about the container in my video blog, the container is sort of what holds me. And then the brain gets clearer ultimately when we pass through these layers of conditioning. Like, ultimately what I see in most of my clients is the layer of conditioning of deprivation. I feel deprived when I don't get my wheat flour Danish or my Starbucks triple cream latte with refined sugar. And we ultimately, we get addicted to subtle poisons, and then we wonder why we're losing clarity. So part of brain health, again, is I'm going to be leading a 30-day seminar in brain health, and we're going to be looking at ways we can retrain ourselves. And in the next video blog, we're going to talk about a couple of very simple methods of raising our consciousness, raising our vibration. This morning I wasn't feeling so well, so I did the emotional freedom technique. It's a tapping technique while stating a certain phrase, and I don't like to stay within the bounds of any strict technique, so I used a slightly different verbiage than is normally indicated, and it worked really well. And did some yoga and did a little bit of breathing exercises, and ultimately I know if I don't take care of myself, then I'm not going to be a very good example as a teacher. And it's a constant dance from where I sit of the brain health, the discerning awareness of saying, I want to help people, but I also need to help myself, because if I'm not an emanation, if I'm not emanating, if I'm a void, then I'm taking in energy, and that's okay at times too, but as a teacher I sort of get attached to even that function when I say I am a teacher, right? It's a sort of I don't want to identify with that. I would encourage none of us to identify with our functions in life. We have a function of, some of us have functions of fathers and mothers and workers and surfers and artists, and it's to me it's more freeing to be free of those things. So getting good minerals. So some of our brain minerals, I'll list them here. Definitely phosphorus-rich foods are mostly your animal proteins, and grains and beans and nuts and seeds are rich phosphorus sources. And if anyone wants more information, then we can always look at, like, lecithin is also, so fat emulsifiers. So eggs are a good brain food. Lecithin comes from eggs. Lecithin comes from nuts and seeds, and there's the whole debate about soy. So there's the soybean lecithin, which lecithin's a phosphorus donor is what I'm getting at. So there's another compound called choline and inositol that are good phosphorus donors. And then the company that I like to sell their whole food supplements also makes a phosphoric acid supplement. So you'll see that phosphorus is a good place to play in brain health. And then sulfur is another one. Sulfur is a very volatile element, and we want to make sure we get enough sulfur-rich foods, which really, there's a lot of sulfur-containing proteins, and we're back to eggs again, and we're back to the sulfur-containing vegetables, which are the ones that are spicy when they're raw, like the cabbage family. There's a certain bite to kale. The allium family, like onion, there's a certain bite to that. And you'll run into the debate with the yogis and the people that are sort of more into, like, the allium family definitely does generate desires. I know as a man that really appreciates my libido and my sexual drive, things can get a bit overheated with garlic. It's a great aphrodisiac, and that's partially because it's a stimulation. Rajasic in the Ayurvedic is stimulant to the nervous system, and so how my being perceives that and how it goes in action is I just naturally have a higher libido. And then we take it back another step and we say, well, what is libido? And libido is ultimately procreative drive. So the key word there is creativity. And so another key mineral is, we said, iodine. And iodine is far and away, doesn't get enough press time. Iodine, there's this thing called iodized fatty acids, and if you want to stabilize your cell membranes, you definitely need more iodine in your diet. There'll be lots more conversations about that when I go into my video blogs on elemental personalities, and that's a whole other series coming up. where each element or series of elements I'll be talking about, they have a personality. Like, so iodine's personality is sort of stabilizing and regulating in some senses, and it nourishes our thyroid. We have a major packaging center for iodine in the thyroid, and for the women in the breast tissue, and even every cell in our body has a certain amount of iodine because it's helpful in stabilizing fatty acids or cell membranes. So our brain needs iodine, and it needs manganese, particularly the pituitary gland uses a lot of manganese. So organs and tissues like our pancreas needs chromium, and our prostate needs zinc. And you'll see this over and over again, that different organs need more elements than others. The liver uses iron, for example, but iron is also one of those reactive elements. And then finally, those are our three main ones, and Bernard Jensen believes that we need bromine in our brain, and I'm not certain where that comes from. Bromine being, I think that there's small amounts of any element needed, but I wouldn't want to be taking bromine in my diet much, in the forms that usually come in our diet, because it displaces iodine. So that's our video blog today on brain health, and there'll be another one. Since I missed a little bit late this last week, week 14, the one coming up is going to be about how to raise your vibrations, and so we're talking about brain health. You know, we want to raise the vibrations of the receiving entity of consciousness or awareness, and I'm going to do some real simple sounding techniques that are also on my YouTube channel, and really I'm just going to talk about kirtan and chanting, as we call it, and it's the repetition of a sacred phrase and subtle sounds. So look forward to seeing you on week 14. This is week 13, Craig Lane. Also signing out, healthalchemy.com, ALKEMY, on the last part of the word, and brain health seminar coming up in a couple of weeks, towards the beginning of May, where we'll be having a 30-day group seminar on the internet and in person to help get, if you have addictive tendencies or you're on antidepressants and other neurological disorders, we can definitely get you in a group setting and get you supported and on your way to getting off of antidepressants and out of your addictions. I think group support is really important here, and we'll talk to you soon. Craig Lane signing off.